Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita on halachos mezuzahs, the porches, yards, small rooms, etc. I'd like to give big shekach to our Pinchas Leitner for sponsoring today's shir with Nishmas Ovid, Rabbi Avrom Ben Pinchas Akain from Ravacha. Your side today Yud Beis Adar and Nishmas Tzur of Tzur who started in the shirim of Irgin Shir Torah for many years. Rabbi Smith.
Recently we had a number of shilos about mezuzah, the porch, one shiloh about a backyard. Interesting shiloh we had about a gym, an indoor swimming pool. I decided we're going to try to talk today about the halachos of mezuzah, specifically which rooms might be chayiv on a mezuzah. Is there any difference, the fact that it's outdoors? We had a shiloh about a gazebo. We'll soon see what that is. The Metzias is that it's something that's outdoors, doesn't have four full walls. But basically we have to try to clarify today, Be'ez Hashem, is really one yesod, and that is, what is the main requirement for a chiyuv of a mezuzah? In other words, we know for tzitzis you have to have dalet kanfos. Understandably, that's the requirement. The question is, for mezuzah, what do you need minimally to mechayev in a mezuzah? Do you need a roof, a ceiling over your head? Then it makes sense that a yard or a porch doesn't require a mezuzah because there's no roof, there's no top on it. An outdoor playground, the mashal, is very functional, but there's no roof on top of it. Is the chiyuv only when there's a covering on the top? Do you need four walls? Is that dafka? In other words, and again, an outside gazebo has four very short walls, but it's not full walls. Is that enough to pata from mezuzah? Do you need a door to mechayiv and a mezuzah? Many rooms don't have doors. Is it only a living quarters where you eat or sleep? So basically, I think we have to reduce it to one concept. Is it any useful area? Is it a bias dafka? So the emphasis is we say Krishma twice or three times a day. And if you look at a pasuk in Krishma, you'll see what seems to be a mixed message. Because the Torah Kedosha says, which of course sounds like the chiyuv mezuzah is totally in a bias. Now I think it's reasonable to believe that a playground is not a bias. But then again, the next word is uvisharecha. Visharecha is the outdoors. And the truth is, this is really what the Gemara in Menachos is focused on. The Gemara says in Menachos Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis the following: Beis Shar, which means a gatehouse; Achsadra, which is something that leads into the house; Umerpeses, which we'll soon see. We type Merpesa today is used as a porch, but it's really more like steps and the landing go into the house. Any area that goes into the house is chayavin b'mezuzah. Now we'll soon see exactly what that means in our living today, but definitely we see that a entrance going into the house, not the front door. A Beis Shar is the gatehouse. Achsadra is a structure in front of the house. All of these things are chayiv and mezuzah. Presumably you don't eat or sleep in a Beis Shar or an Achsadra, but it seems the fact that it leads into the house, that's enough. But what's interesting, the Gemara in Yuma, in the end of Daf Yud Aleph, and I quote, V'atanya, Bisharecha, what does the word Bisharecha mean? Echad Shari Batim, Echad Shari Chatzeros, the gate in front of the Chatzar, Shari Medinois, we'll soon see if you have a entrance into a city. Lamashal, I'll give you an interesting lamashal. So Rabbi Nisni says this, Halavai should be Negeya. But let's say you have an airport terminal leading into a city of Yidden. So you're mechuyev to put a mezuzah on the terminal, because that's a Shari Medina, it goes into the city. Shari Ayoris is chayiv. And the Gemara continues, Refes, a stall, Lulin, a lul shaltanagoyim, a chicken coop, V'oitzis yayin, oitzis shemen, chayavin b'mezuzah. Now, I don't have to explain this, but obviously a chicken coop or a stall is not where we live. And the Gemara feels that all of these are chayiv in a mezuzah. Why? Because there are two categories for hilchos mezuzah. This Beisecha is your house, your living room, your dining room, etc. And then there's the Sha'arim, Sha'arim Medina, Sha'arei Ayarais, Lul Shel Tarnagoylim. I mean, it's a chiddush. We'll soon come back to this. You know, we sometimes we come to Kaparis and you smell the chickens, you run the other way. And here you're saying that a Lul Shel Tarnagoylim is chayiv and a mezuzah? But that's what it seems. So there are really two categories. There's Beisecha and then Visharecha. In fact, the Gemara on the top of the Amid learns this from the pasuk Bisharecha, Shari Botim, Shari Chatzeros. So we see, based on the pasuk, it's lav dafka bayis is chayiv, Sharech is also chayiv. But the chiddush is the Gemara Yuma in the end of Yud Aleph says just the opposite. Yochel shani mar ba'av beishar, achsadru mar peses. You might think a beishar, achsadru mar peses is chayiv. Tamaloyme beisecha. Bayis miyochid, and everything else is potter. Now this is a stira minehu bei, the exact same list. One Gemara says potter and one Gemara says chayiv, and it can't be a stira in the same Gemara. So Taisis, both in Menachos and Yuma, asked this obvious question. And Taisis says, midaraisa, it's only a bayis. A beishar, any gatehouse, any entranceway is potter. And the pasuk bisharecha is an asmakta. But midrabanon yechayev even on a secondary category of bisharecha. That means that in a entranceway is never chayev midaraisa. But, and this is probably the most important yesod for today, Taisus quotes the Rif that says that really if the sharecha leads into a house, in other words, if you have a gatehouse going into the house, it becomes part of the house and it's chayiv midaraisa. If you have a regular archway, l'mashal in an open park, and you have a full tzuras HaPesach, but it leads to more park, but not to a bayis, that's potter. But a shar that leads into the house, even if you don't live in that entranceway, it's chayiv and a mezuzah. This is the chiddush of the Rif, and we'll soon see other Rishonim, that if you have a entranceway that you don't live in, it's just an entranceway into the house. If that's part of the bayis, it's chayiv like the bayis midaraisa. If you look in the Yishalmi, in Yuma, Daf Dalet Amud Beis, the Yishalmi takees, v'chi beis direh, is a gatehouse a beis dira, and for the Yishalmi, sh'nechnosa lebeis dira, and therefore it has the status of a dira. So we see a machlekes rishonim. What does it mean in the pasuk? We say it twice every time we say Krishna. It could be 6 times a day. What does it mean bisharecha? Bisharecha like toisvis is only chayiv midrabanan. But Lord, according to the Rif, if it leads into the bayis, it's chayiv midaraisa. And the Rambam in Hilchos Mezuzah Perek Vav Halacha Ches says beishar you could even have 10 batei sharim, one entrance to another one. As long as it eventually leads to the house, it's chayiv and a mezuzah. So it comes out an interesting thing. The same structure, it's not where you live in. If it leads into the house, it's taka chayiv and a mezuzah. Why? Obviously, because it's tafel to the mezuzah. But we see definitely from here, into the bayis, we see definitely from here that mezuzah is lav dafka where you eat or sleep. Rather, a functional area. So an entranceway, a gateway, is also functional. This is also considered part of normal living. It's lav dafka where you live there. You could have 10 batei sharim, and they're all chayiv and a mezuzah. So now we realize it's lav dafka where you eat or sleep. It's a functional room. Now, but I want to add a little more hez, maybe a little more geschmack. The Gemara says in Yuma Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis that if you have a decrepit home that has no roof, the roof caved in, bayis she'ein lo tikra is potter from mezuzah. Why? Obviously, that's not called living without you don't have a roof over your head. So the kasha is, so how could a beishar or shari medina, a gateway into a city, chayiv and a mezuzah, there's no ceiling on top, there's no roof. The teretz is very pashut. If it's supposed to have a roof, a house without a roof is not a house, So as the Levush explains, Einay roy ladur b'soichai. That's why the Mechaber in Reish Peivav Yudalet says, Bayish einay tikkus patah from a mezuzah. It's not a house. But a gateway, its function is without a roof. It's an entrance. No entrance have a roof entirely. It has a tzuras pesach, and that's it. So in other words, if that's the way it's functional, it doesn't necessarily need a roof. And this is kamat mefurish in a Rosh and halachos Mezuzah in the back of Masechet Menachos, the end of Siman Yud Aleph, that says this yesod in a very pronounced way. The Rosh asks a bigger kasha, because as we'll soon see, a chotzer, a garden, a yard is chayiv and mezuzah. A yard is not with a covering on top. There's no roof. There's no ceiling. Says the Rosh, Chotza darka liyais kach umishamish lediras habotim. A yard, the front yard, backyard, is a very comfortable part of the house that doesn't have a roof. So the lack of roof doesn't indicate it's a problem. But if you have a house, if you have a shed that there is no roof, oichmer abayis. If it has no roof, it's not a bias. So now we see a little closer to home. You don't need a place where you actually eat or sleep. You don't even need a roof over your head. A Beishar is chayiv without a roof. To add just a little more gishmak, and then we'll get to the halacha l'maisa. The Gemara says, and this is gepaskint in Yeridea, Reish Peivav Gimel, Yud Gimel, a bias that doesn't have at least dalit amis with dalit amis, in other words, between 6 and 8 feet square of 6 to 8 feet, is not chayiv and a mezuzah. Why? Obviously, it's not a bias. So even though hilchas sukkah, zayin al zayin, tfachim is enough, which is much smaller, because sukkah is diras harai is enough. But we have sukkah, diras harai is enough. But when it comes to mezuzah, bias, less than dalet amis is not on the map. Yet we find the Chamudei Daniel, now which is one of the Achrayim. It was recently reprinted in the Shulchan Aruch Sif Yud Gimel. The Chamudei Daniel says a beis shar is chayiv even if it's not dalet al dalet. Even a small gatehouse entranceway is chayiv and a mezuzah. And the emphasis, the Rashash in Sukkah Daf Gimel, points out that this is a beferish Gemara in Sukkah, Ayin Sham. But trust me, that a beis shar is chayiv even if it's very small. So the kasha is manishtana. Why is a small room less than dalet patam and a beis shar is chayiv? So teretz is pasha. It's not even a kasha. A room that's too small is not functional. Is not chayiv and a mezuzah. But a beis shar, who said it has to be big? Fakir, the typical beis shar is small. So the fact that it's small it does not indicate that there's something wrong with it. So again, it's all the same yesod. I think the definition for chiyuv mezuzah is functional. A small room is not functional, but a beis shar, even small, is functional. A room without a roof is not a roof. It's not functional. It's not a room. It's not functional. But a beis shar typically is functional. A chatzah, a backyard, the whole convenience, the whole pleasure is you're outdoors. So it's a room without a roof, fine. The one thing, believe it or not, that we need which is most important for mezuzah, is based on the Gemara in Menachos, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis. And to quote the Gemara, Achsadra is patura lefi she'ein la petzimim. That basically, this achsadra, we'll soon see, it's not exactly like our gazebo, but it's an archway that led into the house, and they also use, it's like something like a porch that has a structure to it. It led into the house. So the Gemara says an achsadra is pata. Why? So the Gemara explains, because this particular achsadra only has 3 walls, and you walk into an open area. It's like 3 walls and an open, like a garage that's completely open. So what's wrong? So Gemara, what do you mean? The Aleph of Mezuzah is you have to have 2 mezuzahs, 2 doorposts, and a mashkaif, a lintel. That's the most important part of mezuzah. And this achsadra has 3 walls. It could even have a roof on it. But there's no mezuzah mashkaif. There's no tzuras pesach. No, you're laying in Parshas Boy. In Torah Loshin, mezuzah is not the parchment that you write it on. Mezuzah is the doorpost. The Taisus Rid, the Piskei Rid explains that we call the parsha based on the pasuk of mezuzah, which means the doorpost. You put it on a mezuzah, so the parsha is called a mezuzah. But what's most important for a mezuzah, it has to have a tzuras HaPesach. I mean tzuras HaPesach, the two doorposts of a typical house, and one across is the lintel. So basically, this is the correct definition of the chiyuv mezuzah. Let me be very clear. What exactly is required to have a mezuzah? You don't need a bayis dafka. Even a beis shar, even an outer area, even a shari medinas is chayiv. You don't need a roof over your head because a beis shar is chayiv without a roof. And the emphasis, according to the Rif, it's chayiv midaraisa. This sharecha is a chiyuv daraisa on a beis shar. You don't even need 3 full walls. We'll soon see a gazebo, today's gazebo, that has walls that are 10 tefachim, at least 10 tefachim, is enough to mechayiv mezuzah. The Shulchan Aruch in Sif Tezvav, our simon today is Reish Peivav, this is Reish Peivav Tezvav, says even without doors, it's chayiv in a mezuzah. Okay, it's chayiv midrabanan. So you don't need a door, you don't need a roof. You know what you need most importantly? It has to be a functional area. A house without a roof is not a house. A small house is not a house. But a beis shar that's functional as it is chayiv midaraisa like the Rif, without a roof and without even being dal ramas. Because basically a functional area is chayiv in a mezuzah. The one thing that it needs l'chol hadayis that's ma'akiv entirely is a tzuras HaPesach. You have to have 2 mezuzahs and a mashkit. Now let's apply this lemais, and I hope you'll enjoy as much as I did. How we see so many shilas are very simple once we have the yesod. I saw recently one of the streets, I forgot to make a note where it was, but someone had a front yard like most homes have, and he had a gate around it, like many homes have, and he had a door that opens into the front yard that goes up the steps to his house. But this house was unusual. It didn't have a door with a gate. The door was part of a full tzuras HaPesach. Picture you walk into someone's front yard, the house, completely outdoors, you open the door and you look up, there's a full tzuras HaPesach. Now if you want to see this, next time you have a simcha and you're in a teres chinka, so the gate that goes into what we know most of the time as the yeshiva playground, but it's also for you the chuppah area, but there's a gate that separates the chuppah / playground area and the street. There are 2 like this. In the gate, there are 2 doors that go into the playground area. Both of them have doors, but it also has a full tzuras HaPesach. So you have a door, tzuras HaPesach, leading into the open shamayim. Those doors do and are required to have a mezuzah. Why? There's no roof over my head, and I don't sleep or eat in the outside by the chuppah area or the playground area. Who cares? This is a Gemara beis shar. This is going into the area. So those would be chayiv and a mezuzah. Now that house, l'chayr should be chayiv, that has that archway, should be chayiv and a mezuzah. Now don't go home, run home and say, I have to put a mezuzah in my front yard. Because most people, I would say 99.9%, if they do have a door, but they don't have a tzuras HaPesach, the door is connected, but it doesn't have a tzuras HaPesach. So that's Ikar Chasam and Asayf, it's no chiyuv whatsoever. I looked into this. I did find the Vayivarech David in Chelik Aleph Kuf Tezayin. This was written many years ago, but Hitaka has this shaila about an archway you have out in the street, but you lead into the house, and it has a tzuras HaPesach. So he says that maybe you pot it because the guy might take it off and ruin the mezuzah. So he says, so then don't put up a tzuras HaPesach, we can't have mezuzah. But the point that I see, which makes sense, is that if indeed you have a tzuras HaPesach leading into the yard, even though you look up and it's tachas kippas hashamayim, it's still chayiv in a mezuzah. Now, some people have, this is more common, especially in other neighborhoods, they have what's called an overhang. Now, that's not a achsadra. They basically have something like above the door area, so they could stop when it's raining or snowing, whatever, and it has beams. that's supporting the overhang. But that's not a tzuras Pesach. That's part of a different shir we once spoke about, that those beams are there lachazik atikra, to hold up the roof, the overhang. But it's not as an archway to go into the house. And the Gemara says the same sugya, Masechta Menachos, Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, says lachazik atikra. That's to hold up the wall, the top, the roof is not chayav and mezuzah. This base medrash has a wonderful chazik atikra. Over here you have two beams. Why don't we say going in has to have a mezuzah going into this part of base medrash? There's a beam over here. These beams are both lachazik atikra. It's not an archway to go from the right side of base medrash to the left side of base medrash. Interesting, Ha'ara, the city of Seagate, not far from here, has a gate around it, has a Beishar, and even has a Shaima sitting there watching. That would be Chayiv and a Mezuzah. That's Reish Peivav Sif Aleph. That's Shar HaMedina. I doesn't have a roof, big deal. I doesn't open into someone's house, but this is Shar HaMedina. I saw this in Karels and Chutshani and Simon, our Simon. He says if you have from an airport terminal leading into a city, so the archway is Chayiv and a Mezuzah. The reason why, I don't know if Seagate has a Mezuzah or not, but the emes is the Taz and Reish Peivav and the Shach both say, and the Archashochan spells this out in Sif Aleph, Sharei Ayares, that's Chayiv and a Mezuzah, is only if it's Roiv Yidin. And I understand that Seagate is not Roiv Yidin, so even if Lamais it has a real qualified Beishar, it's part of a Mezuzah. Recently I've seen this because of the heightened security. Many yeshivas, moistas, have a little booth where a security guard sits outside of the building, and he does his job, hopefully. The shaila is that booth chayiv and a mezuzah? Now, the truth is that that's a bias. And the emes is Rashi on that Gemara, and the Taz in Reish Peivav Sif Cotton Zayin quotes Rashi, that Beishar really is the gatehouse where the Shema sits. And you can't get anything better than that booth that some moistas have, that l'chayr should be chayiv mezuzah. But there are state shuvas b'dav. First of all, if the Shema is non-Jewish, and that's exclusively his place, so there are poskim that say that if it's not part of the house, if you give a guy to live someplace, not in your house, if you give a guy to live, let's say a living maid lives in one room of the house, so the Archashochan and Siv Dal, the Chayvas Adar, of Shtermach will say if he's living in your house and he's not paying rent, does not rent the apartment room, you have to put a mezuzah because he's living in your quarters. But this is an independent quarters, so a guy is living in independent quarters, it's not your responsibility. But more so, that booth is less than dalet al dalet. It's not a dira on the literal sense, it's basically a little cubicle. So that wouldn't be required to have a mezuzah, but that would be the closest, according to Rashi and the Taz, that would be the real McCoy Beishar. What is interesting to mention, many homes you come into the front door, and you have what's called a vestibule, or foyer. Basically, you open the front door, and you come into a little room. What's the purpose of the little room? Simply, you don't want the cold to come in, the heat to come in during the summer. It's more private. You don't want someone barging into your house. So many homes you open the front door, little room, and another door that leads into the house. So it's interesting. Typically, people put the nicest mezuzah where? On the front door. I mean, at least the nicest mezuzah case for sure. That's for sure. But they put it on the front door outside. Where does it lead into? A vestibule that's typically less than dalet al dalet. And what do you do in the vestibule? Nothing. Maybe a mold is you hang hats and coats a little bit, but at least my own home, my parents' home, we both have vestibules less than dalet al dalet. So the shaila is you're putting up a mezuzah, and again, typically people put the nice mezuzah, and when they move in, they make a bracha on the front door, and then with that they put on mezuzah in all the rooms in the house. Why are you putting mezuzah onto a room leading into less than dalet al dalet? The answer is that vestibule is a perfect Beishar, perfect. It's exactly what the Gemara is talking about. And like the Rif, it's a Chiyav D'Oraisa. The Beishar leads into your bias. Now the emes is I is less than dalet al dalet. So that we have the Chamud Daniel that we mentioned earlier. A Beis Shar that doesn't have to have Dalet al Dalet. Now the truth is, there are some that argue in the Chamud Daniel. And also I would mention that according to Tosfos, and the most, a Beis Shar is only Chayiv midrabanan, that we can't change. Tosfos says the Reis of the Rabbanim. So if you would ask me, when you move into a house and you're making a bracha on one door, make it on the next door going into your house. The outside door, you could keep the fancy case, that's fine. But to make a bracha on the outside door that leads into a Beis Shar, it's only Chayiv midrabanan like Tosfos, and if it's not Dalet al Dalet, I'm not saying it's always less than Dalet al Dalet, but if not Dalet al Dalet, so it's only a Chamud Daniel. I mean, God, the most poskim agree to this Chamud Daniel. But Lamaisa, I saw Rav Moshe Rabbi Yashim this in Karelitz quoted as saying that this vestibule, you could make a bracha on it. Because you could rely on the shita of the Rif that it's Chayiv midaraisa, and therefore it's a regular room. And even like Tosfos, it's midrabanan, you make a bracha on the Rabbanim. But it's not a full Chiyav like anything else. So Lamaisa, I'll tell you another interesting ha'ara, that people that have a bathroom in their bedroom. So again, typically some people don't like to go from the bedroom to the bathroom. They have a little room, go into that little room, and then from there into the Beis HaKisei. So the emes is, that little room is a Beis Shar. But it's a Beis Shar leading into a Beis HaKisei. So since we understood the Havana of a Beis Shar is, it becomes part of the room you're going into, so we could say another Chiddush, which is not a Chiddush, it's Pashit, a Beis Shar that leads into a Makom Patur has the same Tur. So it's interesting, you have a door going into a little room, that's not a Beis HaKisei. But since it functions as a Beis Shar, it becomes tougher than a Beis Shar, and it's patur like the bathroom. Now, if that room is a little bigger, and it has a sink, so that's an interesting machlokes we once discussed, which negeya in many shuls and many moisters and many catering halls, we have a washroom that leads into the Beis HaKisei. So most poskim say, well, if there's no Beis HaKisei in that room, so it's a washroom. Why is a washroom patur from a mezuzah? Some say no, but it's a washroom leading into the Beis HaKisei. So the question is, in such a washroom, that's really an independent washroom, does it have the status of a regular room? And it's chayiv. The fact that the next room is the Beis HaKisei, so what? But some consider it as part of the Beis HaKisei, and that's what you'll notice. I think most do have mezuzahs and some don't. It's totally in this shayla. The next group of questions are basically questions of what identifies as a chiyav mezuzah. For example, moises today have playgrounds, either ground level, on a roof, on a porch. Is that chayiv and mezuzah going out to a playground, a gym, a pool, fully enclosed? You have an indoor pool as a regular room to a Pesach. So the emes is, you say, how could a chayiv, a pool? But then again, when you learn the Gemara, and the Mechaber says in Reish Pei Vav, right in the beginning, Sif Aleph, a refes, a barn, a stall, a lul, a chicken coop is chayiv and a mezuzah. So why should a pool or gym be different? The Moshe says in Yerdei Aleph Kuf Ayin Zayin that you chayiv on a wine cellar, oitzvus yayin, even if you're going once a year, as long as it's functioning, it's keeping the wine. So Lamaisa, that's why I saw in a wonderful sefer, he's speaking about a playground, but more so a gym, an indoor gym that has a full Tzuras HaPesach. And typically they have regular doors, regular Tzuras HaPesach. Why shouldn't it have a mezuzah going in? It's going into one of the Tashmishei Habayit. Okay, you don't eat or sleep in a gym, but that's not the criterion. So l'chayra, it makes sense. Again, I can't tell you I found the Rashba because they didn't have gyms at times of the Rashba. And there it's rolled the Kapoiskim, they don't talk about it, and maybe that's not so common. But if you have a gym that has a real, full-fledged Tzuras HaPesach, so, and especially it's indoors, and it has a roof on it, like, why shouldn't it be chayiv and a mezuzah? So you say, has the what? So you can say something has not so nice smell, but then how is it less than a lul or refes? So l'chayr in svara, that should definitely be chayiv. Now, what he speaks about is a playground, an outdoor playground. Let me explain. Basically, again, because we live in the city, so everything has to be, it's pretty much, confined. But in the backyard is converted into a playground, which means you open the door, the back door from the maisid, and you go into a fully enclosed playground. So you're opening a regular door with a full Tzuras HaPesach. Instead of going into a backyard, you're going into a playground. So this l'chayra, since it has a regular Tzuras HaPesach, and you're going into a fully functional area that the children use every single day, unless it's very cold, but it's a fully used room. So the chayra, that should be chayv and mezuzah. Also, he's a little noisy to say without a bracha, it's outdoors. But the truth is, the playground is typically, the benefit is during the summer, it should be outdoors. So to say that it's chayv mezuzah is very perfectly logical. Certainly, and this you don't see in our city because we don't have too much space, but in Moistis and suburban areas, in Muncie and Lakewood, they have a totally freestanding, independent playground, which means it's completely enclosed by a gate, a regular door, a regular Tzuras HaPesach, to keep people out, whatever, lock it up at night, to make it safe, whatever it is. So you're walking into a fully functional playground with a complete Tzuras HaPesach. Why shouldn't it be chayv and mezuzah? There's no roof, but if that's the way it's used, you want to have the benefit, especially in warmer countries where it's warm most of the year, why can't you keep it outdoors? So the chayr, it's pashut, it should be chayv and a mezuzah. Again, that sefer has a different cheshma why he feels it's not chayv with a bracha for sure. But these rooms are rooms that are functional. The fact that there's no roof does not mean that it's not chayv and a mezuzah. Now, what we see today, again, in our city, because there's so little space, many moistis need playgrounds. They don't have the space. So they convert the roof to a playground. Of course, they make it fully. I'm only talking if the roof is mutter to go up. There's a perfect makkah, a very safe makkah. But at the end of the day, picture the roof has a completely enclosed playground with high fences, perfectly safe. Now, how do you go up onto this roof? I'll tell you where the yeshiva I'm in, the yeshiva Ketana has, you go up to the stairs, a regular door, regular Tzuras HaPesach, that leads you onto the roof. Simple. Complete Tzuras HaPesach. Now, it's still a roof, it's still open on the top, but it's fully enclosed, it's safe. So the emes is, the Yishalmi in Daled Yud Beis and Megillah says that a typical roof is patah from mezuzah, which is very pashut, because there was no makkah and it wasn't used, so why is it chayv mezuzah? The fact that it's open space is not a chayv mezuzah. But as I saw, the Chayvas Adar in Beis Vav says that if you have a roof that is enclosed and you use it, and this is of course an older mashal he gives, but even if you only use it to hang laundry, because before they used dryers in Yishalayim, avadas chayv and mezuzah. So the fact that it's used, you don't have to eat or sleep there. This is tashmishi abayis, to hang your laundry. The Debetzina Rav and Chelik Beis, Sadik Aleph quotes a Marsham and Beis Reis Samachay, that a roof that's used is about a chayv and a mezuzah. Why not? It's one of the usages of the house. In fact, I saw that Sefer Agab Alechi points to a Ramban in Bava Basra Beis Amid Beis that regarding Hezek Riyah, there's more Hezek Riyah by a roof than a chotzah. And the Ramban says because a gag is more useful than a chotzah. But in those days, a gag has a very much use. But the truth is, our moistus, they're so tight for space, and they created a fully functional playground on the roof. Why shouldn't it be chayv and a mezuzah? Now, where do you put the mezuzah? On the right side going out, because that's the room. It happens to be a room that's without a roof, but big deal. The roof is not ma'akiv. Now, one thing I found to be a chiddush, Adar, if you have information, please tell me, and that's the question if a pool, let's start with an indoor pool, if that's chayv and a mezuzah. So again, an indoor today, granted, even outdoor pools have the same quality because, of course, for tznius, we have to have the pool completely enclosed by a proper mechitza for tznius. More so for safety, every pool has a door that opens and locks to keep children out when there's no swimming. So now we're talking about an indoor pool or an outdoor pool that has basically a full-fledged Tzuras HaPesach door and mezuzah's mashkef, the works. So the emes is, we know, it says in Shulchan Aruch, it's a Gemara, a merchatz is patah from mezuzah. But as all the poskim explain, that's only a merchatz that's molei zuhama, a very unclean area. In those days, they didn't wash often, And the merchas was a place that even here is awesome. It was one of the dirtiest places, and even here is awesome. But our pools are clean. Now, the emes is a mikveh, the shach and tzivka and tes is a mikveh's pata, even in the dress room, because oimdim shama rumim. But our pools, there's people wearing bathing suits, so it doesn't have that reason to pata. So the emes is mitzad Allah. I'm not saying it's the proper thing. You can make a bracha and learn in a pool if you're dressed at least moderately la halacha. So why shouldn't a pool be chayv and a mezuzah? So the question is, an outdoor pool has no roof. So what? The roof is not ma'akiv. I care. You want an outdoor pool. So the emes is, but what am I doing in the pool? I don't eat or sleep. I swim. But again, once you understand that the chiyuv mezuzah is lav dafka beisecha, your dining room, but any functional room, a beishar is chayv midaraisa. So why should a pool be different? So I looked into it again. I didn't find this in Rishonim, but I said the Vayvarach David in the next tshuva in Aleph Kuf Tezayin. He says that basically a pool is chayv and a mezuzah. The only thing is, he says, if the pool is in the mountains and and they don't have a mikveh on the premises, they use the pool as a mikveh. So that he brings a good raya taka that a base teven and base eitzim lefa'amim you wash there and you oim them arumim. That's enough to part of the area. So a pool, even though its main usage is with bathing suits, but if it's used for the mikveh, so then it's potter. Okay, but let's see the pool today. Granted, many colonies have their own mikveh. So if you have a pool that's only used for swimming, it's chayv and a mezuzah. And that Ogol Alecha Lamed Beis Lamed Dal says also this very shaila. Swimming is not a mokem gnai, so why shouldn't it be chayv and a mezuzah? Now I found a number of the Heintige Poiskim all agree that it should be chayv and a mezuzah. Now again, one of their Tzroldike Poiskim, he says, but a pool that you pay for per usage, so no one's the bailim, so it's like a rental in and out, like a hotel overnight. But our pools are owned by bailim. The only one I found that says Beferish, that's Pot, is Rav Chaim Kanievsky in the Das Noita. It's a new sefer on Hilchos Mezuzah. In Tshuva Kuf Nun Tes, Rav Chaim responded that, and I quote, that this pool area is Oimdim Karv Rumim. He calls it's not a diras covered. No, Lamaisa Puk Chazi. I haven't seen a mezuzah on a pool area, but it's not an interesting point. It should. We need to know why not. If it has a full tzuras Pesach, indoor or outdoor, again, if it's owned by individual and it's not used as a mikveh and there's no oimdim shama rumim and it's clean, l'chayra, in seichel, it should be chayv in a mezuzah. Someone has information, I'd love to hear. Next question is negeya to many camps, bungalow colonies. It's becoming very popular, and I'll explain why. And that's what's called in English a gazebo. Now we have probably half a dozen in our camp. It's a wonderful option to make learning outdoors very pleasant. Basically, it's a structure made out of wood with low walls, just as a mica height, so no one should fall down. It gives you the experience of being outdoors, and they build it in the wooded area, so you're learning it with the Brenishem's nature. It's a beautiful monument. There's a roof, walls all four sides, but low walls, just 10 tefachim. There's a tzuras Pesach going in. It's like a regular shear room, but it has the breeze. Unless it's a very hot day, you don't need air conditioning. Machaya. Now, there's no door. Okay, so it's only midrabanan. But basically, this seems to be a new form of achsadra. Now, again, the Gemara's achsadra, when you learn the Gemara properly, you'll see, was such a structure that led into the house. It's like a porch leading into the house. This is a freestanding, independent gazebo that has 4 walls, 4 halachic walls. I mean, you have to see that it's 10 tefachim, but 4 walls, a roof, a full tzuras Pesach, and the question is if it's chayv and mezuzah. So when you learn Shulchan Aruch, Reish, Pei Vav, Si Vav, the Mechaber is very clear. Like the Gemara says, Achsadja chayv mezuzah. Achsadja de beirav, for the Gemara. In Drunya Ma'al Yaseh, that's a regular chiyuv mezuzah. Why? We said earlier, if you remember, Achsadja is part of a mezuzah, for the Gemara. So why Achsadja de beirav is chayiv gomor? It's like Gemara, the chilek is pashut. If it only has 3 walls, it's missing the ikka, tzuras Pesach, it's patin gansim. But this Achsadja de beirav has 4 walls with a proper tzuras Pesach. So not only it's chayiv b'diavad, And Dunya Ma'aliyah, it's a full-fledged chiyuv. In fact, the Paiskim say, such a achsadja de beirab is chayiv and a mezuzah with a bracha. So now the question is, our gazebo, which is not exactly, doesn't lead into a house, but it has alamaylas, 4 walls, it has a turas pesach, it has a roof even, no, not, and okay, it doesn't have a door, so it's still chayiv midrabanan, you can still make a bracha, if you hold that without a door is chayiv in a mezuzah. And I saw the chayvas hador in Beis Lamed Gimel and the kuntres ha-mezuzah in Kuf Yud Tes. If it's made ledira gemura, and he's not talking about like our camp, I'm soon see. He's talking about a gazebo that you live and you eat and drink. You can make a bracha on that gazebo. Why? It's regular living. Now again, I want to be very clear. The Gemara's achsadja led into a house, but this is like its own house. It has all the requirements. Zicha daled al daled. Now, however, I've seen many achsadris that I use in day camps and camps, and I haven't seen a mezuzah yet. Now, I did my homework. Why not? So what I heard from the Shem Paiskim, I couldn't speak to them personally, is that since it's only used just for a shear, an hour or 2 or 3, whatever it is, but it's not used like a beis medrash of day and night, it's not chayiv and a mezuzah. What's the source? The Shach and Taz. When the Shulchan Aruch discusses that a beis knesses means only for davening, is certainly part of a mezuzah. A beis hamedrash is chayiv, and the Shach says, why is different than a beis knesses? Kivan talmidim yoishmai miboik ad erev dumi ladira. That's the Shach and Taz both say. So this place that I heard quoted was that these gazebos are used for shiurim, but not a beis medrash. So therefore, it's not chayiv and a mezuzah. Now, the emes is im alachu nekabel, but then again, if that's the case, then all our share rooms in yeshivas and all our day camp rooms that they learn in just for a few hours are part of a mezuzah. So the emes, the Torah and Simon Reish Pevav, a very interesting story. He said the Man Rutenberg did put up a mezuzah only after he said that really he didn't have a mezuzah. But he went, slept in the afternoon, and he had a very bad dream. So he decided he better put up a mezuzah. So we see when someone sleeps in the beis medrash, he's chayiv and a mezuzah. So typically when you give a shir during the summer, trust me, people fall asleep. but even not, if they use it, our camp, they use it a number of hours, and occasionally they have an Einik Shabbos on Shabbos. But the embassy is, again, if you want to be technical, so it comes out that really, even a beis medrash, unless you learn it day and night, there's no chiyuv mezuzah. Shir rooms, there's no chiyuv mezuzah. Imagine a person builds a new beis medrash and he calls it Adam Godlam Mikviyas a mezuzah. No, you can't make a bracha on the beis medrash door because you don't use it day and night. So Taka Rav Osner held that you better make a bracha on one of the private rooms that people use for living quarters. But this is a big sugi about a beis medrash. But the fact is that people are sitting and learning for so many hours without a mezuzah. I think it's a good chinuch, at least mitzad chinuch, to put up mezuzah. I'm not saying to make a bracha on it, but if it's taka not used day and night, there is a tzad to be makel. But the fact is that the structure of it is at least chayiv like any other bias she'ein ba'idelas. Today we have an interesting scenario. Many homes, many private homes, and certainly many moistes have a door. Let's say, I'll give a perfect example. Someone has a 2-family house. He lives upstairs. So he opens the door going up to his house, and what does he see? A staircase. He doesn't eat and sleep in the staircase. He goes upstairs to another door that goes into his house. Is there a chiyuv on the outside door that opens only to a staircase? Today, moistes, yeshivas, apartment buildings have a door opening to staircases, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, all the way up. No one lives in a staircase. Is that door, the front door, that leads to staircases, is that chayiv and a mezuzah? The answer for us is gishmak. That is a typical beis shar. You'll say, but I live in the 5th floor. Terrific, you made it to the Rambam. The Rambam says even 10 batei shar is chayiv and a mezuzah. Now the emes is here to be clear. Mir peses, today in modern Hebrew, mir peses is used as a porch. Mir peses in the Gemara, which is Gemara Lashon, Rashi and Yuma Yud Aleph says it's very close to our staircases. Rashi and Yuma Yud Aleph says, U'aruch lefi pischei aliyas harbe v'kulan oilin derech sham. The Rambam in Pirush Mishnayos and Ma'asos Gimel Vav, mirpeses makom gavoy al gabi karka chatz shebay hasulam kavua she'oilim boy el ha'liyos. More, the mirpeses of the Gemara more typically is a staircase with a landing that they used. That's why it was more of a chiyuv. But today in modern Hebrew, mirpeses has become a porch. We'll soon speak about a porch. But I saw the Chayvas Hadar in Hey Yud that a Cheder Madregos is like a Beishar. And if it has a Tzuras HaPesach, again, that's the Ikka, it's Chayiv and a Mezuzah. So basically, we could say that this staircase is at least a Beishar, and like it's the Rabbanan or the Raisa, but I would add for those that keep items, they keep strollers or they keep items in the staircase, so it could be also like a Beis Haitza. So that's another reason why it's Chayiv. Now, another interesting group of questions that I think today we'll appreciate, because now we have the sugya hopefully clear, is the question of a person that has a porch. Now, I'm going to use this Heilige Oren just just imagine this is a door going out to my porch. My porch is on the street, Tachas Kippas HaShemayim, and there's no way to get from the street to the porch. It's the typical porch that people have. They open the door of the house, the dining, whatever, and they go onto the porch. Go through this Paroiches, you go onto the porch. Where do you put a mezuzah? Or, typically, you have a backyard. So again, let's say this would be the door to the backyard, and you go out to the backyard that's open to the Rabbi Shalom in the backyard. There's a door, full Tzuras HaPesach, going out to the backyard, or going out to the porch that's outside. So, to answer this, we'll say a Shaila Hashlishi, V'yachriya Beinayim. Let's assume, just for a moment, that this is not the backyard, this is the front of my house. And I'm a Bester Mention type of person, and I have a Tzuras HaPesach and a door. Okay, imagine this, pardon me if you're using the porch. This porch is a door, and this is a Tzuras HaPesach, a full Tzuras HaPesach, going into my front yard. And from there I go into my house. Am I chayiv mezuzah on this full-fledged archway going into my yard that's Tachas Kippas HaShemayim? So you're right, no? This is a regular Beishar. It's Chayiv Mezuzah. The right, the one, it's Chayiv Mezuzah. Where do I put the Mezuzah? On the right side, going in? Obviously, right? Why not? Pashut, right? So, you see you put on the right side going in. And that's Taka di Halacha in Shulchan Aruch. This is Sharei Chatzeiros. In other words, you're going into a yard is Chayiv and a Mezuzah. In Yeridei Reish Peivav Sif Aleph, based on two Gemaras, Sharei Chatzeiros, like this, right over here, front door, front yard, going into the yard is Chayiv Midaraisa and a Mezuzah. Okay. The question is, why are you Chayiv and a Mezuzah going into an open yard? So I'll tell you, like you said, what's haste? Why not? It's like a Beishar. And that's the way the Rambam, and I mentioned the Meiri and Yuma, the Bein HaManoyach, Gedolei Rishonim all say that this door going into my front yard is Chayiv Alza Beishar. However, if you look at the Rosh that I mentioned earlier, in Hilchos Mezuzah, I'll read it again because it's so negeya. The Rosh says, the Chotza Darka Liya is Kach, U'mishamesh L'diras Habotim. The Rosh is learning that the reason why you Chayiv Mezuzah on the front door going into the yard is because the yard is one of the rooms of your house. And as we'll soon see, the way the Chazon Ish explained, in those days they had small homes. They used their yard for all of Tashmishi Abayis. They cooked, they prepared the food, they sewed, they laundered, they made laundry. So just like the dining room was Chayiv Mezuzah, the yard is Chayiv. Why? It's one of Tashmishi Abayis. So this archway is Chayiv because it's the door going into your yard. The Chutz itself is Chayiv. So you're wondering, what's the nafkamina? L'mais you mechayiv to put the mezuzah on the right side going into the yard. What's the difference if it's Beishar or Chatzah, right? But one thing I want to tell you, that it's going to be a nafkamina of all of our shaylas. Because you look at the Madana Yom Tov on this Rosh, he says, oh, the Rosh says the Chiv is out a room? That's different than the Rambam that said the Chiv is out Beishar. Now you're wondering, what's the nafkamina? A beautiful nafkamina. Let's just change your mindset, and this is a door going out to your backyard. Okay? Now the question is, where do you put the mezuzah? So you're wondering, well, what's the shayla? Like the Rosh, you put it going out to the backyard, right? Because it's one of the rooms. But like the Rambam, Rabbeinu Manoyach, and the Meiri, why is it chayiv and a mezuzah? Because it's a beis shar, going into your house. Now, in the backyard, where are you going to put the mezuzah? You're going to go onto the yard, walk into your house, understand that the yard is the beis shar into your house, and you're going to put it on the right side, going back into your back of your house. Now, this is not my chiddush. Listen, shimu suchi nafshechem. Lamaisa, the Maril, Minig Ashkenaz, in Siman Tzadik Dalet, has this very shayla, a door going to a chutzah. And he says, what's the shayla? You put a mezuzah going into the chutzah. The chutzah is one of the rooms of the house. And the Taz in Reish Peites, Siv Dalet, crystallizes this. He writes at the end of that shtickle, there are so many people that are confused, I felt obligated to explain. And the Rav and the Taz explains, Rachel Bitchak Tan, and I quote, the chutzah k'moy cheder. Your backyard is one of the rooms of your house. So where do you put the mezuzah when you go into your dining room? Going into the dining room. So where do you put the mezuzah when you go into the backyard? Right side of the backyard. And he bases it on the Maril. So he says, why are you confused? And Maril and the Taz understand that a backyard is like one of the rooms of your house. So there's absolutely no confusion. Now someone said, yeah, but I'm going out of my house. No, you're going into a room called backyard. So what do you mean going out of your house? Ad kan divrei Taz based on Maril. However, as you could understand, if you understand that the chiyuv of a chatzeres is a beis shar, argues the Beis Meir in Yeridei Reish Peites very emphatically. He says, the Maril, he writes very edel. I can't argue in the Maril, but Shein Emel does he argue in the Maril? And he says that it can be. The Rambam, Rabbeinu Manoyach say that a yard is chayiv al beis shar. So the yard is going into your house. Says the Beis Meir, you cannot put up a mezuzah on the right side going out of your house to the yard. You put on the right side going into your house from the yard. Wait. And he says it over and over. Ikka of the house is the house, and the yard is the way to get into the house. Now wait. So he says, yes. Now listen to this. Shimus chenashchem. Yes, the Maril held put it going out, because he learned like the Rosh that the chiyuv is because the yard is a bias, cheder, so you're going to a cheder. But I'm telling you that the house is the ikka, not the yard. But listen to what he says, and if you know Yiddish, you'll appreciate this. He says, look at the way people talk. You say you put the mezuzah, negate arayin in the cheder, right? Now, here, he says, when you say you're going to the yard, what do you say? Ich will arois gehen. What do you mean? I'm going into the yard. No, ich gehe arois. Wie gehst du? Teretz is you're going out. So from that alone, he says, okay, arayin shti. What do you mean? You're going back. Teretz says, yeah, the dog's good. So he's saying you're going out to the yard, you're leaving the house. You don't make a bracha go. You don't put a mezuzah going out, but only coming in is where you put the mezuzah. Wait. And the Heilige Chazanish in Yeridei Kuf Samach Ches Dalid has the same exact approach. But again, he also explains that the Maril and the Taz understood that the chotzer is one of the rooms. But he says, but the bias is definitely the ikka. Now, and the Chazanish spells out like this Yesod. So it comes out, our question of going to a backyard, and we'll soon see the exact same story, is with a porch, is basically a machloikis gedolei rishonim. What's the chiyuv of a shari chotzer? Is it a beis shar going out? Then you have to put it going into the house. Or is it an independent room? Now here's what I think is most important to mention. The Chazanish says something that I think we all could relate to. He says, even the Maril will be moida in our times that the chotzer, the backyard, is not used for tchina, afia, shtichas peiris, shar tzrochim, oichlen, yeshenim. In those days, the yard was a fully functional room. And you have to realize, especially if you live in warmer climates, you could use the backyard 10 months a year. unless it's, a little colder. Eretz Yisrael, the outside is used often. Here in America, how many months could you use it? How many, is that too cold, too hot? But the Chazon Ish seems to say that in our time that the yards are only used infrequently, it's not a cheda. Even the Mariel will be moida. You put it on the right side going in. So this is the Machlokes Mariel versus the Rishonim, the Taz versus Beis Meir and Chazon Ish, and that was the easy and the Geschmacka part. Now you ask me, so what do I do Lamaisa? Well, consult with someone smarter than I am. But what I think we can understand is that if indeed your backyard is not ke'echad mi chedri habayis, if you don't use it that often, use it for sukkahs because you have to go to Golos, you go in the backyard, and you enjoy Amal Shabbos the afternoon, and you take out a Ramban with a glazel tea in the backyard. But if it's not ke'echad mi tashmishi habayis, it doesn't qualify for the Rosh's Yisoid that it's chayiv al tzcheda. So that's why, again, if you have such a situation, we could understand the Chazon Ish's point is it's not ke'echad michadri habayis. Now, if you have a backyard that leads to a garage, or many people have a converted garage into an office, so they go out to the backyard, but that's the only way to get to the office or garage, then even the Chazon Ish b'moida, you're going and continuing to the house, as if the house extends. You put on the right side going out. If you rarely use your backyard, then l'chayra, it could be even Arila's moida. And what's interesting is, if someone tells me, I use my yard more than anybody in this universe. So if you look closely, I think the Chazon Ish would agree, you put it going out. But the Mariel says, the Beis Meir stresses, the bias is the ikka, and you never put it going out of the bias. So even in this case, he would say, put it going in. And the next question is an upstairs porch, which there's no access from the street. Again, here is your house, and here is your door going out to the outdoor porch. There's no access from the street. It's the exact same shaila, and you should know that pashtus, many people say, well, you put it going out. But here you have to really evaluate what your porch serves as. Can you say that this is like the Rosh described, that it's like a room of the house? Can you say this, like Mariel says, that this is like one of the rooms of the house, I'm going arayin in the porch? If you use it infrequently, then it's not a chiyav b'tzaratzmai. And then the bias is the ikar, and this is the tafel. Then you would have to put the mezuzah on the right side going into your house. I say, wait a minute, but I'm going back in my house. Right. But that's the point. To put it going out to a street is never chayv. Imagine if this door to my right would only open from the inside, an emergency door, but everybody uses it because that's, the more yitzhar if you had only for emergency, but you can't come in from the street. You can only go out. So there's no chiyuv mezuzah. You don't put a mezuzah going out to the street. So they say that would be the same thing, going out to the street. So you have to put the mezuzah on the right side going in. Now, again, to consult your local Orthodox rabbi, but there are plenty written about this. But the beauty is that this question of the backyard or the porch is really the machlokes, Rosh versus Rambam, Mariel, and others, all the way down to our Archway. But let me leave you with one question, food for thought, because if it's negated to you, you should research this. Today, I've seen more than I ever seen elevator shafts having a mezuzah on it. Now, the emes is we grew up. Elevator didn't have mezuzahs. And I can understand why. Because an elevator is not a place to live. You can't live in that little cab as it's called. It's very often less than daled al daled. And even if it's daled al daled, but it's not even, it's less than aroi. The Shulchan Aruch and Reish Pei Vav Yud Aleph says that bias svina is part of mezuzah because it's aroi. But an elevator is even worse than that, because when it's not functional, a person can fall down, clearly get hurt. So it's basically not a chiyuv mezuzah. In Mincha Shloimeh Tinyana, in Simon Kufar, Zalman has an analogy. Imagine you walk out of this room, and there's a box being drawn by a horse, and it takes you places. Are you machayev a mezuzah on that? That's what he says. So that's why we understood that there's no chiyuv mezuzah on an elevator. Not on the cab, because it's too aroi. But the emes, if you think about what we learned today, there's a good reason to understand why Gedolei HaPoskim, Asher Mipim Anu Chayim, feel that it should need a mezuzah. And this is what they say. On the ground floor, no, never put a mezuzah on the cab itself. because that's not Chayim Mezuzah. That's Archway, and that's too small. But on the ground floor, you put it on the Tzuras HaPesach, which it has, a real Tzuras HaPesach, going into the elevator. That's the Beis Shar going to your floor. Now you live on the 37th floor, right? So why is there Chiyuv Mezuzah? Because that's the Beis Shar to the 37th floor. When you get out of the elevator to your floor, where do you put the mezuzah? Right side going in. Now is that a stira? No. Because on the ground floor, it's the Beis Shar going to the up floors. And each floor has a chiyuv going out. So if you don't have a mezuzah on your elevator, you better research to know why. I couldn't talk to you all. Thanks for listening.
Shame the English Torah, like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful share. We should all have the school of mezuzah for Shmir for Agans Klal Yisrael. Also like to thank Rabbi Pinchas Leitner for sponsoring today's share. Nishmas Oviv, Rabbi Avram, Rabbi Pinchas Sakoini, who came all the years with Messias Nefesh Shurim. Today's Idiota, it should be a Susil in a Shmosai. We gaan naar elkaar hebben een uitgekozen voor de zaken. Het is gewoon een dikke gegeven. Het is gewoon een man die het kan jagdeel teuren bij jou.